Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're taking a deep dive into something I know a lot of you have been wanting to know more about, and that's the link between autism and night terrors.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that's close to a lot of people's hearts, and understandably so.
For sure. And to help us unpack all of this, we're going to be looking at excerpts from Cheap ABA Understanding Autism and Night Terrors.
Great source of information.
Definitely. Now, before we get into the autism piece, maybe we can take a step back for a second. I think sometimes people, myself included, can get a little confused about the difference between night terrors and nightmares. Like what really sets them apart?
That's a good point. It's easy to lump them together,
Yeah.
but they're actually very different. With night terrors, you wake up terrified,
Right.
but you don't really know why you're scared because night terrors usually happen during deep sleep. We're talking non-REM sleep, so you're not dreaming the way you are when you have a nightmare.
So you're saying with a nightmare, you usually wake up and you remember what you were dreaming about, but with night terrors, it's like you just wake up with this feeling of fear, but you don't have those concrete images to attach to it.
Exactly. And that can make them even more unsettling. People in the middle of a night terror, they often seem really disoriented, like
Yeah.
they don't even recognize people who are right there trying to comfort them.
And that must be so scary for everyone involved.
It can be very intense, for sure.
So it sounds like night terrors are a much more, I don't know, visceral experience than just waking up from a bad dream. But how does this all tie back to autism? That's what we're really here to dig into.
So there's definitely a connection here, right,
Yeah.
between autism and these night terrors.
Oh, absolutely. Research shows that, and this is important, kids with autism, they're way more likely to have sleep problems, night terrors included, than kids who aren't on the spectrum.
When you say way more likely, do we have numbers on that? Yeah, so think about this. Night terrors, they affect maybe like 1 to 6% of neurotypical kids.
Ah.
But for kids with autism, that number jumps to a whopping 25%. Big difference.
That is huge. Okay, so what's going on there? Why is there such a strong link between autism and these night terrors?
Well, lots of things can contribute, but sensory processing, that's a biggie.
Sensory processing.
Yeah, so imagine for a second you're experiencing the world, but everything's turned up to 11. Sounds are louder, lights are brighter, even the feel of clothes is more intense.
Okay, I think I get it. So for someone with autism, even everyday stuff that most people don't think twice about, it can be really distracting, maybe even overwhelming.
Exactly. And that right there makes it tough to not only fall asleep, but also stay asleep. Because it's not just about drifting off initially, right?
Makes sense.
For some folks on the spectrum, those sensory sensitivities, they make it hard to move between sleep stages. They're more prone to these sudden awakenings and bam, night terrors.
Oh, so their sleep is just more easily disrupted. And then because they're already so sensitive, those disruptions hit harder, scarier.
Exactly. Plus, and this adds to it, tons of autistic individuals, they struggle with anxiety and stress
Uh-huh.
way more than what's considered typical.
Which I imagine doesn't exactly help with getting a good night's sleep either.
Nope, not at all. It feeds right into those sleep disruptions and those night terrors. And then here's another layer. Many people with autism have a hard time communicating, right? Like putting their fears and anxieties into words.
So then it's like all of that, the sensory overload, the anxiety, the trouble communicating what's bothering them, it just builds and builds. And then it comes out in these intense episodes at night, like their body's trying to say something it can't quite articulate.
Exactly. You said
Yeah.
it perfectly. And that's why, finding ways to help these individuals manage their anxiety, teach them how to communicate better throughout the day, those aren't just daytime goals. They can make a real difference at night, too.
That's a really good point. So it's like a cycle, right? Working on communication and anxiety can help with the night terrors, and then maybe getting a better night's sleep makes it a little easier to work on those things during the day.
Right. It's all connected. And while we always have to remember that every single person on the spectrum is unique, and their experience with sleep is going to be unique too, understanding these underlying factors, that's huge for finding ways to manage the night terrors.
So if we're thinking about helping, about managing those night terrors, especially for someone with autism, where do we even start?
Well, a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about before, those sensory sensitivities. Remember, it's like everything's dialed up, way up. So the sleep environment, that's got to be top priority.
So we're talking like the classic stuff, making sure the bedroom's dark and quiet and all that.
You got it. But it's more than just the basics. We want to minimize any sensory trigger. So yeah, blackout curtains are great for blocking out street lights, maybe a white noise machine to kind of even out those disruptive sounds. Even the bedding can make a difference.
Oh, right. Like if they're sensitive to certain fabrics or textures?
Exactly. Soft, breathable materials, those are your friends. It's all about creating this space where they can feel safe, secure, not bombarded by sensory input.
Like a little sensory sanctuary. I like that.
And routine. Can't stress this enough, especially with autism. Having that predictable bedtime routine, it does wonders.
It's like setting their body clock to wind down mode, right?
Precisely. Warm bath, a favorite book, maybe some calming music. Those all send the signal that, okay, time to chill, the day is over.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for those whose night terrors, they're really rooted in anxiety, we got to tackle that head on during the day.
Yeah, makes sense. So what helps with that?
Could be therapy, learning coping skills, relaxation techniques are great, deep breathing, meditation, that kind of thing. And don't forget, good old-fashioned exercise. Helps burn off that extra energy, reduces stress.
So it's really about looking at the whole picture, both the sleep environment and what's going on emotionally.
100%. And this is where working with a healthcare provider is so important.
Yeah, because everyone's different.
Exactly. What works for one person might not work for another. So having that guidance, finding that right combination of strategies, that's key.
Well, I feel like we've learned so much today, even just about the difference between nightmares and night terrors. It's not something we always talk about.
For sure. And it's easy to feel helpless when you see someone, especially a child, going through a night terror. But the good news is there are things we can do.
Absolutely. And knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about what's going on, the better equipped we are to help.
Couldn't agree more. There's still a lot to learn, for sure, but this is a great starting point.
It really is. And it makes me wonder, this whole deep dive into autism and night terrors, it's got me thinking about sleep in general. Like, maybe some of these strategies, they could benefit everyone, even if you're not on the spectrum.
Oh, totally. A calming bedtime routine, who doesn't need that? And being mindful of sensory overload, that's huge for a lot of people.
Exactly. It's like sometimes by looking for solutions for one group, we stumble upon things that can help a lot of people. Kind of reminds us we're not all that different after all.
Well said. And who knows what other sleep secrets are out there waiting to be discovered.
Right. Maybe that's a deep dive for another day. But for now, to everyone listening, thank you for joining us, and a very special thank you to our expert for sharing the incredible knowledge. And remember, a good night's sleep, that's something everyone deserves. We'll catch you next time.